The economy. The economy is the thing that drives a country. Basically, it's how we trade and how we trade internally and externally. That's the economy. Now, in Kenya, our politicians are constantly going on about how the economy is doing badly. In fact, I cannot remember where at any point a politician who was not in government said the economy was doing well. Look at Isaac Mwaura, he of the Jubilee fame. Listen to him last year, 2020, speak about the economy.
The government will never tell you the economy is doing badly, because that is to mean that then they will be accepting. The economy is not doing well. Let's not lie to each other, because also the government has faced that reality. It's just that they cannot come out and shout, and that's why I'm telling you as the Vice Chairman of Senate Budget Committee, they are saying, for example, this economy will grow by 6.2% this year. Our projection is about 5.6%, and that growth is only limited to certain sectors. You know, the sectors that really affect common mwananchi are going to suffer, because now, look at the issue of the locusts. Can you see how it has affected agriculture? And it will affect agriculture. Look at the issue of coronavirus. Most people go to take their merchandise from China. So you can imagine now the paralysis of all the goods, because China is a world factory. Now we can't get from that. Look, so you can imagine how we are affected before that one subsides. Look at Brexit. You know our strong ties with the UK. In fact, for a very long time, they used to be our most significant business partner as a country. With the exit from the European Union market, it therefore translates to the fact that these individual countries are going to suffer. And that's why you saw Brexit trying to revive the Commonwealth. In fact, in 2018, we did a Global Disability Summit as an entry point because they wanted to establish partnership with Kenya. But Trump has given them a good trade deal. So if then they divest their outlook to America, what would happen between the goods that we are manufacturing here, flowers, you know, name whatever we export to the UK, even raw materials, vis-a-vis, you know, the income that we are supposed to get. So we are likely to see a further dip into our export. Most of the containers that bring, you know, goods through SGR, they return empty. It is very well documented. So we are exporting nearly nothing. And when you look at the Big Four agenda in terms of manufacturing being 15% of our GDP, we are attaining nothing. Now we have entered into a political mood. We are now, in fact, I saw Kalonzo saying that we should have a referendum in September. So it's a referendum, then after that, 2022. When will people actually work?
My good friend Dismas Mokua calls Jubileenomics a wholesome joke. Now, is this true? Ekuru Yatani would beg to differ.
In this respect, economic growth for 2020 is projected at 0.6% in 2020 and 6.4% in 2021. Over the medium-term, growth will be above 6%. The growth outlook will be supported by stable macroeconomic environment, ongoing investments in strategic priorities of the government under the Big Four agenda, turnaround in trade and as economies recover from COVID-19 pandemic, and expected favorable weather that will support agricultural output. It is worth noting that in spite of the COVID-19, we have continued to maintain macroeconomic stability as measured by the existing low and stable inflation and interest rate and a competitive exchange rate.
Now, where is the truth? What exactly is a failed economy? Is Kenya's economy in the red? Is it in the black? And what can be done if either circumstance is true? Now, if you're going to have any debate concerning economies, you must begin at the GDP numbers, because numbers don't lie. So let us look at the GDP of Kenya as it stood in 2020, 98 billion shillings, billion dollars rather, that is 9.8 trillion shillings economy. That is the economy of Kenya, meaning that all the output of economic activity totaled 9.8 trillion. Now let us put that figure in perspective of the region. In the region, our closest competitor remains to be Ethiopia. Ethiopia's economy varies very close to us. It was last at 96 billion US dollars as at 2020, but here's the crazy news. Tanzania's economy is nearly half of Kenya, sitting at around 50 billion. You've got Uganda, which is nearly a third of Kenya. And by the way, I will not talk about Rwanda because its economy is so small. Some speculate that Safaricom's value is much more than that of the economy of Rwanda. But I hear you say that what about the poverty? So let's take a one-to-one comparison. Let us look at Ethiopia versus Kenya. Now, a lot of people say that Ethiopia is our biggest competitor, and let us see the fields in which we compete. So other than competing with our athletes in the Olympics, and you can check a clip of us thrashing Ethiopians there as well, and we do not only thrash them in the Olympic field, we overtook them as the largest economy this side of Africa. And by the way, Kenya is top 3 economy in sub-Saharan Africa, only beaten by South Africa, which sits at number 1, Nigeria at number 2, Kenya at number 3 in the whole of sub-Saharan Africa. In fact, to put that in perspective, Kenya is richer than Namibia, richer than Botswana, richer than Angola, okay? Just to put that in perspective. But let's do a one-to-one comparison with Ethiopia, our greatest competitor. Now, here's the thing. We have roughly the same GDP, but Ethiopia has twice our population. So when we are sitting at 48 million, they're approaching 90 plus million. And if you do GDP per capita, you realize that Kenya's GDP per capita, which is GDP for every person, which means that if we divided the wealth of Kenya equally among our people, each Kenyan is twice as wealthy as an Ethiopian. Underline that, highlight that, twice as wealthy as an Ethiopian. Small wonder, you see a lot of Ethiopians moving to Kenya to seek opportunities, because whereas their economy may be equal to us, they've got many more mouths to feed than we do. Let us continue a bit further. Ethiopia's economy has been growing. It has been lauded across the world as one of the fastest growing economies in Africa. Now, if you look at the percentage growth over time, you will find that Kenya and Ethiopia's GDP have been growing interchangeably at around the same rate. So I always wonder, when we praise Ethiopia to the detriment of our own nation, it seems we do not have the numbers, but that's why this show exists, for us to go down to the numbers. Now, it doesn't stop there. Ethiopia has been building an airport. Kenya has been building an airport. Ethiopia has been expanding its infrastructure, and this is where we beat them. We've built more road per kilometer than Ethiopia. They've done the SGR. The only difference is the SGR was cheaper. And the reason it was cheaper, it's because the constitution forces Kenya to do restitution for the land that we possess to build infrastructure. Ethiopia is not encumbered with such small, trivial matters as ensuring people are paid handsomely for their land. Is it a blessing or a curse for the country? We don't know. It's for sure a blessing for two people. One, the NLC commission that today is in court, and two, the people who got this particular land. Now, Ethiopia has the huge dam it is building on the border between itself and Sudan, that is northern Sudan, and it's creating a lot of tension between it and Egypt, because remember, Kenya cannot do anything to touch the Nile because of a treaty that was signed in the 1920s and reaffirmed in 1959, just before we got independence. But Ethiopia has no such encumbrance. It was not a signatory to this particular treaty, and it has built the dam. Now, what is our comparison? What is our pushback? Our pushback is the Lamu port and the Lapset corridor that is set to upset shipping across the region. Ethiopia has another disadvantage where we beat it. We have, and we're building now, two external ports, the port of Mombasa and the port of Lamu. Ethiopia is landlocked. The rest of the things, the coffee and tea, we can compete head to head, with Ethiopia having a slight advantage in coffee because corruption. Kenya, yes, cartels and coffee. That's where we are struggling. But economically speaking, Kenya comes up ahead of Ethiopia. So then, we must then address what you guys are thinking. You're saying, so what? The economy is growing, has been growing, and I've shown you from the graphs, by the way, just a small thing I think you need to look at. Over the last 8 years, we have nearly doubled our GDP, which means we are twice as rich, almost, than we were when Kibaki left. This is how I mean. Kibaki left us at between 44 and 50 billion, depending on who you ask. So let's take at 45 billion, that's the average. Today, as we sit here in 2021, Kenya's economy is averaging $98 billion, which means we are officially double, I repeat, double the economy Kibaki left us. So when MPs and different leaders say our economy is dying, I really wonder what they mean. Now, of course, there is the COVID peculiarities, which I'm not going to cover in this show, so hold on, calm down. I know you're about to write in the comment sections and get so angry at the fact that I've not talked about 2020 and a 1% rise. Trust me, this is just episode 1 of 101, and what we're going to do is we're going to go in depth in all of these issues. But let me, before I check out on this episode, address the simple issues of debt, because that has been the taking point in many a campaign rally, that we're literally choking in debt. Now, again, I will use Ethiopia as a comparison, and I want you to look at this chart, and you will notice that Ethiopia's debt ratio to GDP is almost the same as Kenya. Now, why do I mention this? Because I cannot compare with the smaller economies. It does not make sense. I can't even compare with South Africa or Nigeria, because let's remember, these are resource-rich countries. They've got diamonds, they've got oil. We are talking about a country that we can compare ourselves to. So I'm just focusing on Ethiopia so that you understand. Now, what that means is that the average debt ratio for these countries is the same over the last 10 years, in fact. In fact, what we have done and what they have done with the debt is the same. We've largely financed infrastructure. Now, I'm not going to discuss the effects of corruption, because we will have a totally different episode concerning corruption and our economy. But mile for mile, dollar for dollar, Kenya has outdone Ethiopia in building infrastructure, roads, last mile connectivity. What does that mean? It is part of the reason why our economy has grown, because the people in the rural areas who could not evacuate their produce in time can now do so. The ease to access market provided by infrastructure is one of the fastest ways to grow the economy, and that is something that Kenya has done very well. Now, I will leave it there, and I want you to think about the following things. Is Kenya reducing poverty? And perhaps that's where we will start next episode on 101. See you then.